performs poetry for a variety of global, corporate, non-profit, and state functions. In 2015, he launched the ambitious Heritage Theatre series, a project aimed at reenacting the history of Ghana through a series of theatre productions. The flagship play narrates the story of Ghana through a beautiful blend of drama, music, dance, and poetry. Chief Moomen is also the founder of the Bamboo Center, a creative hub located in Adenta, Accra, established to nurture creative skills and businesses. In 2018, CNN featured Chief Moomen in an edition of its African Voices series. His notable performances include events at the National Theatre of Ghana, the 2013 Vodafone Ghana Music Awards, and the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2018 Africa Women Cup of Nations, where he performed with his ensemble of drummers, dancers, and singers. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a resounding applause and welcome Chief Moomen.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Rather unfortunate that I couldn't be in Accra with you. I would have loved the opportunity to share this moment with all the great speakers, with my brother Ibrahim, my great friend Juliet, and all the rest of you. But I guess with technology, I can still be actively present. Let me start by thanking City FM for platforming the creative arts. I would say that this is not the first time City FM has been such a great champion of the art. I think that since I started following the station several years ago, City FM has always had a soft spot for the creative art and has provided a great platform for us to showcase our works, but also to engage the general public. And so I'm very excited about this next level of actually discussing the creative industry, not just as, something that provides, some kind of delight for the public, but also the serious aspect of the creative industry being a serious business that can provide great employment and that can also impact our economy greatly. And so I'm quite excited about this opportunity. I know that Apioka did rather a very extensive, introduction of myself, but I'll just also take the opportunity because I should have sent her probably an updated, profile of what we're currently doing. Yes, I'm a poet and a playwright, and I also describe myself as a creative entrepreneur. And mostly my work deals with history and heritage. And so we started this, this is almost 2 decades since I started, active, work in the creative arts sometime around 2017. And then around 2012, I started theater productions when we produced heritage, Heroes Day celebrations in honor of the soldiers who were killed during the 1948 riots. And from there, we continued producing productions until I developed the flagship project called Heritage Theatre Series, which was our attempt to really reenact the history of Ghana through a series of spectacular theater productions. And then from there, we moved on. Now, the current project I'm working on is the Mansa World, which is really a multi-platform world of different content, starting with theater, but also tackling general issues of African history and heritage, packaging our stories in exciting ways that we can sell to the rest of the world, because the world is the market, right? So not just to ourselves, but to the rest of the world. And let me just start by saying that, interestingly, when I started this, several years ago, let's say 2015, when I actually launched my flagship theater project called Heritage Theatre Series, there was another flagship project that was launched in the US and was a stage musical on an aspect of their history by one of their founding fathers called Alexander Hamilton. I'm sure most of you may have heard of the Hamilton musical. We all started around the same time. Several years later, Hamilton is $1 billion, business, if you like, that has created a lot of employment and impacted the economy greatly in the arts in the US, but also has helped to revive an interest in the musical and invite a lot of young people, into the theater, right? So you compare when we all started at the same time, how far Hamilton has gotten to, and you ask, and I usually ask myself, how far has Heritage Theatre Series gotten to, right? So if I were in a market like the US, how big would I have been as compared to finding myself in a market like Ghana and try to build something? So I'm just trying to show that, two different countries, similar work, similar talent, but one has gained considerable traction because it is in an environment where the market is developed, where the opportunities are there, where the investments are there, where the patronage is there. And so our ambition is, how do we get to that point? How do we get to a point where a young person in Africa can create a cultural product that can have global resonance like any other person in any other parts of the world? How do we get to a point where my environment does not limit my dreams, does not limit my abilities, and that regardless of the challenges, I'm able to build something sustainable. So for me, it has been a lifelong vision to create a cultural product that was going to tour the world, that was going to derive maximum value, and to build a business that was going to employ hundreds, thousands, and have a great impact on the value chain. And this has been my single obsession. For example, how do we create $1 billion product out of African culture and creativity? Why? Because others are doing it, right? Africa is known as the continent of culture and art, but we are the least who have derived the economic value out of that talent. All the rest of the world are deriving great value out of their culture and art. And we who are known as the continent of culture and art are yet to explore the full potential economically of our cultural products. So for me, my vision has been, how do we create $1 billion industry, a mega industry out of African culture and art? It will only happen, one, if we're able to get the right kinds of investment to create the right kinds of products and to export, around the world. And that's what I've been working on over the years. And I'll just briefly share, some of my perspectives about the important areas that must, be looked into if we're trying to create sustainable, cultural products out of Africa. I also say this knowing that art exists, not just as a commercial vehicle, but also as an important tool for social transformation. So we look at art in the two pillars of the economic empowerment, but we also look at it as a critical focus of, revitalizing the mindsets of people and re-energizing them, giving them hope, and also, pushing society in a certain level. And I may touch briefly on that. Briefly, I see there are three major pillars, if you like, ingredients that must be present for you to have a very thriving, creative industry. One is personal, two is professional, three is policy, and that's how I'm just going to briefly base my my presentation on. So number one is personal. What do I mean by personal? At the end of the day, creativity it boils down to talent, right? Your number one value is what you are good at. If it is poetry, if it is painting, if it is curation, if it is fashion, if it is acting, at the end of the day, creativity must evolve from a fundamental place of quality. That is your raw material. That is your fundamental capital. If you don't have this capital, then you have no business being in creativity. So it's always very important for people to understand what is your value proposition. What are you good at? If you want to, explore careers in the creative industry, because that is the most important capital. That is the foundation for everything, So you just don't wake up and say, oh, I want to be an actor because I see people acting and they are famous, and, I want to be a celebrity. That whole idea of a celebrity craze. If that is your ambition, then I'm sorry, you're on the wrong path, right? Maybe you see my brother Ibrahim Muhammad doing amazing things around the world, wrapping buildings with his glorious and provocative, installations, and you feel like, I want to do same, right? Do you want to do same because that is really something that you want to do, because that is really something that you want to say, or it's because Ibrahim Muhammad is doing this, okay, I feel I also want to do, similar. So at the very foundation, the creativity must evolve from a place of talent, and indeed passion. But as important as the talent is drive, because talent without drive is redundant. You may have the talent, God may bless you with all the amazing skills in the world, but if you do not have the drive to continue to build on your vision and your passion, then you're going nowhere. And if I can relate this to my own personal examples, over the years we have gotten the opportunity to be on the biggest stages of the world. We've shared the same stages with CEOs, with presidents, with head of major institutions. My team just returned from Bahamas, where we did a big performance at the opening ceremony of Afrexim Bank's annual meetings, in front of over 10 heads of state and major business leaders in Africa and around the world, right? What is putting us there? It's not because we have some important connections, or we have someone who says, hey, chief, I'm pushing you, or we have a relative or anything like that. It is just the power of the talent. From the very small beginnings when I used to perform, at open mic events in town at the University of Ghana, one person seeing me and giving me an opportunity to come on another stage. It is that value that has continued to build and to provide the platform upon platform upon platform. And it's not just that value, but my consistency in doing that. Because when we started, when I started poetry, it was just for the love of it. I didn't think of it as a career. In fact, when I was in school, if you had told me that I would be pursuing a career in the creative art, I couldn't have told you I would, right? But I opened myself to opportunities and possibilities such that when the doors began to open, I was able to march through. So your talent and your drive and your persistence are the two fundamental ingredients that you need to thrive in the creative economy. And then the second is professional. And when I say professional, I look more at the business side of the work. Obviously, for every business, you need some level of investment, some level of financing. But in art, I see financing as two things: profit and for non-profit. Because art occupies an important place in building people's mindset and in driving societies and in building civilizations, there's you can't place sometimes a monetary value on the dividends you get from art. So if you think across history, across nations, and across societies, across empires, there have always been great patrons of the art. Probably one of the most famous paintings in the world is the Mona Lisa, which is hanging in the Louvre in Paris, right? Painted by Da Vinci. Da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa under the patronage of one of the greatest banking families in Europe, called, back then in Florence, the Medicis. So what they used to do is that they would commission all of these artists to create works, that can be exhibited all around the world. So if you visit Europe, you go to their museums, you go to their cathedrals, you see all of these, immaculate frescoes and artworks and paintings. A lot of them were done not as a business proposition, but as a value to social, imagination. And so you find a lot of people investing money in the arts in that way. So one of the things that I have always championed that we need in Ghana, we need is in Africa, are patrons of the arts. People who say that I'm going to put an endowment behind the National Theatre to create a series of performances over, a year or a number of years just for the social value of it. Look at what my great friend and brother is doing in Ibrahim Mahama, right? My question is, where are the northern business leaders who have to put their resources behind him? Because at least if you are not sure that young people can do things or be managerial, at least these are some of the examples, right? So we need people to understand the role of the arts and put resources behind it, not necessarily for profit, but for that social impact that we need. Well, that's one of the most fundamental things you need in every society. So as we give to the mosques, as we give to the church, one of the things that we need to do is to deploy money in such a way that we're able to fund artistic practice. Right now, most of the funding that comes, for grants, opportunities for creatives in Ghana and Africa to create comes from abroad. All of them, most of them, I'll bet you maybe 90% of them comes from outside. So if others are rather investing for us to tell our own stories, how about us? So I think that especially for this young generation, because maybe this older generation, that battle is lost. But for our younger generation, some of us will become very successful, I have no doubt. Those of us who become successful, how do we deploy our wealth in social transformation? One of the things we have to think of is the art and make monies available to museums, to institutions, to foundations, just to create, and populate the world and the country with artistic material as a way of, kickstarting an African Renaissance. So for me, that's a great challenge that I have taken upon myself. That is a great challenge that we can already see as evidence in Ibrahim Mahama putting his own resources behind his Savannah Center and making it happen for others. And then obviously we also need commercial financing because there's the business aspect to it. And for commercial financing to have been on a campaign to tell, especially banking institutions, look, they will say that they don't understand our industry. It's very risky, blah, blah, blah. It's understandably so. But the interesting thing about banking, for example, is that all banks always have a percentage of their monies that that doesn't yield profit, right? They call them non-performing loans. So in every industry, whether even in the most tried and tested industry, the real estate industry, the oil and gas industry, banks will always loan out monies to them, but you would always find a percentage of that, that doesn't come back as profitability, and some of it comes as profitability. I think that there must be an appetite, to deploy a little percentage of those non-performing loans, to the creative industry or sectors like this. The argument I'm just trying to make is that, look, once it's risky, but once you invest, some will succeed and some will and will not succeed. But oftentimes, the few that succeeds can succeed so well that it will cover your losses. So even though it is risky to invest in our sector, it is important for us to begin to have an appetite, to make that investment, else we are never able to grow. But I also understand that it's the responsibility of artists to make a big business case, which is a challenge. Me, I'm a creative, I'm a writer, I'm a producer, but I also have to be, a business development officer, developing proposals, developing budgets, pitching. But that's the work that our generation has to do to clear the path for others. So it's important that there are structures and financing institutions that are able to invest in bankable products. Some of them will fail, but some of them will succeed. And I'm getting close to the end of my presentation. And the last is policy. Policy is really the last that is always going to catch up. That is government agencies. Obviously, the ideal situation is that you have a very proactive government that understands the role of the art and that makes bold and ambitious investments, by making opportunities available for creatives to access funding, not just to access funding, but even the enabling environment. So, for example, right now, if we're a graphic designer and you wanted to get a very good machine, because of the depreciation, of the city and the appreciation of the dollar, laptops have become so expensive. Cameras have become so expensive. So if you want to get a good laptop that may cost you about $1,000, plus, you have to be spending about $50,000 to $20,000, for example. So maybe when government looks at these things, can we say in that case, can we reduce taxes on some of the inputs that are needed in the creative industry, especially in the digital space, like computers, like the cameras that they do? Can we make the environment, even if government is not putting in money into the sector, can we make it more enabling, for resources to be available to those sectors? I know that over the years, because of our advocacy, a lot of work has been going on in creating an enabling environment. And we only hope that as the politicians continue to talk more and capture the creative economies in their manifestos, the effort that they put in would correspond with the promises that they make. So when you look at my presentation, personal, professional, and policy, but this is really the crux of the matter, right? Obviously, you all need three to succeed, but the most important for success is personal. So even if the professional environment is not, conducive, even if the policy environment is not conducive, just with your talent and your drive, you can be successful, in the creative industry. And the examples that we see in our part of the world is actually because of that personal talent and that personal drive. On the other hand, even if you have the best professional structures, even if you had the best policy structures and you didn't have the right talent and the right drive, you can never succeed in the creative economy. And so for me, I think that the time is now. There's a lot of attention that is being, put on the creative industry. Banking institutions are beginning to wake up, funding agencies, people are beginning. Even this program, I'm right now on a panel, in Lagos that is exploring, the use of the creativity to improve democracy in African countries. So this is the time. And I would like to encourage all young people out there, or parents out there who see that there's a potential for their children to practice the arts, to encourage them. And when I say to encourage them, I know that sometimes we're a bit apprehensive, because everyone wants their children, to have, a good earning. But I think that if we have an expansive view of the art is not just acting or music or dancing, it casts across, and artistic skills and talents are even needed, in regular industries as well. And so once again, I'm very excited about this opportunity. I'm very excited, to interact with all of you. And for me, I have been on a journey for the past, almost 2 decades to create what I believe will become one of Africa's biggest storytelling platforms on the global world. And it's taken us time, and that's one of the most important things I'll leave you with. It will take you time. So start early. If you're a young child, start exploring your abilities. If you're in the university or in any technical institution at the tertiary level, that is the time to start. Because if you wait for a long time to start, then you are behind. But if you start early, then you can make up, the time. I remember in one of my pitch to investors, they were telling me that, these big ideas that you have is going to take you, about 20 years. And I told them, well, I'm actually in my 20th year since I started my artistic practice, because I didn't start the 3 years ago when I started pitching to you. I started way back, even when I left, primary school. So start early, build your portfolio. But the most important thing that will sell you in the art is the value that you present. That is your most important capital. And never underestimate the importance of small beginnings. We started spoken word events, on school campuses, small audience. But the thing about art is referral. One person sees you somewhere on a very small stage, they recommend you onto a medium stage. The next level, you're on a bigger stage. So your most important capital is the value that you present. And you should never underestimate that, and never underestimate your small beginnings, because life is really a journey and you take it one step at a time. And so thank you very much for this opportunity. And I look forward to still joining the rest of the panel.
African Cinema Summit, it started with a dream, and if you have a dream, you need someone to believe in that dream. You need a people to buy into that dream. We had this dream, we were planning all of this, but serious work really started barely 5-6 months ago. And oh my God, we are here today. And we should be proud that we've done it. Africa did it. For the first time, an African Cinema Summit focused on Africa, happening in Africa by Africans. We've built our table and we are calling the rest of the world to come sit with us at this table. Africa Cinema Summit is here to stay.
We need to strengthen our copyright laws to protect our artists and assist them with marketing. There is a large market around this world which appreciates African films. We need to work to ensure that our actors, actresses, and filmmakers reap the benefits of this market. Our continent's balance of payments will also benefit. The African film industry can also clearly benefit from targeted state support, which will improve the lives of the members of the industry as well as the fortunes of our respective nations.
We must also prioritize gender equality in the film industry, promoting and supporting the work of our talented women and filmmakers. It is time for Africa to assert its voice on the global cinema stage and unite in our commitment to create a vibrant African film industry.
The African film sector is still largely on top, 5 billion out of 90 billion, and really not telling a unified story. We have huge investment opportunities. The value chain for film is huge. And indeed, the other one about investment is just safe environments. Africa, we have systems of governance that investors around the world can identify with, and therefore provides you some bit of stability.
I hereby encourage all stakeholders in the film industry to invest in this extraordinary part of Ghana. Akwemuman and my good self are waiting to welcome you and make your investment journey with us a rewarding one.
I want to encourage everybody in this auditorium, both private and public sector, to work together, to collaborate, to encourage more cinema development, to benefit community education and economies, but also to create kind of cultural destinations which enable, the African filmmakers to tell their amazing stories. Because what I've seen today and throughout the last little while that I've been involved in Africa is that there's a lot of stories to be told, and they need a venue and a place to be told.
Plans are far advanced with the creation of an eco city within the boundaries of Akwemuman. I have earmarked various parcels of land to support the film industry, and more importantly, especially the creation of a film studio.
Everybody here is here because of money. Nobody is here because they want to make friends. And when we say we need money, we're not talking about we need money for ourselves or only for our films. We need money for our country. We need to be able to continuously sustain employment in film for our generation and the next generations, and even the older generations that were here before, who open the doors for all of us to get into cinema.
Welcome to the Film Investment Breakfast Meeting. This is a very important conversation, and it's really an industry conversation we're coming to galvanize.
As we all know, film is a powerful medium that alters perceptions, shapes ideas, and promotes understanding across boundaries. It is not just for amusement. It serves as a mirror reflecting the variety of our society, maintains our legacy, encapsulates the essence of our culture. Consequently, funding the film industry is a wise financial move as well as a calculated investment in our cultural identity. Distinguished guests, it's therefore important that there's collaboration between government agencies, private investors, and industry stakeholders to cultivate a thriving film ecosystem.
The producers want to do more, but they also need funding. And when you engage them on one-on-one basis, what they need to do to ensure their movies are done properly, marketing, all they cry about is support from the government and lack of private investors. So I think
that we must give credit to the NFA for taking this bold step. We have not sold the film concept to the ordinary entrepreneur. This is a new kid on the block, sort of, to the investor in this country. We must engage them further.
Someone may ask, why should we care about the film industry? According to UNESCO, the highest employment in Africa is provided by the sector and the entire creative space. And we all know that by 2030 or so, Africa will have 40% of the global youth population. That's an opportunity, but also could be a risk. How could it be a risk? It could be a security risk if employment is not provided for that population. And so a sector that is the highest employer on the continent is a sector that needs to be paid attention to.
Let's keep in mind that the audiovisual sector is very rich in creativity, has higher influence and impact on the socio-economic development of the nation.
At the very core of Ghanaian cinema lies an unwavering authenticity. It's really about how we weave tales that resonate deeply with our shared human experience, how we create stories rooted in our rich cultural heritage that speaks to us in our various languages and dialects and touches our hearts, and forge a bond of relatability that transcends the screen. It is this cultural authenticity, this genuine reflection of life, that brings our stories to life.
And if I could say one thing to you right now, it's a great time to be Ghanaian. The world is interested in us. And you know what? Together, we can't do it alone. Together, let's put Ghana on the map.
So with all being said and done, I borrow a quote from Zig Ziglar that says, things don't just happen, people make them happen. Everyone here in this room makes this happen.
Thank you very much. I showed the video just to show you about the business environment that is growing and that is available to tap in. Before I jump into what I'm going to say, let me first say a big thank you to City, now ChannelOne, ChannelOne TV, but also City FM that have been a big supporter of the arts and continue to do so. I myself, I say to people, I've been in this space for 30 years and counting. It's been my whole life. I started when I was 17, and I'm now hitting 50 this year. And so this is the space that has taken care of me, I remember when I started, after my first film, actually second film, I said to myself, if I don't turn this into a business, I'm not going to survive. Basically, that's what I told myself. And so then I went on to start a production company, and then I went back to school to learn the craft of it and the business of it and all that. And as they say, the rest is history. And then on and on, years after, I thought to myself again, okay, there needs to be some policies and things in place that will make us thrive, because you're doing this and you're doing this, but you're not going anywhere. Nobody is fixing it. So again, how can I make a difference? And so I went back to school, learned public policy and public administration with the intent that I'll come back and enter into government and try and make the changes that I myself want to see for my sector and everything. And I think so it was a very strategic move. I said to myself, I'm going to put 10 years of my life on the line to help do this. I think I'm hitting 12 and 13 years now, so I think I'm beyond that. But I think I'm at the place, or eventually getting to the place where I feel that
you know, the things that I wanted to see are beginning to happen. And so perhaps very soon I can step back again into creating my art. But I say all this to just anchor it on an idea. When I was sitting down, I was having a conversation with, we were talking, today is the first time we've talked more, but we should have had this conversation long ago, Mr. Ibrahim, and we're talking about what he's been able to do, and the fact that it's a combination of perhaps passion, love, and he's found a way to make money out of it. Not with what he's doing right now in the northern part of the country, but he's making money from it elsewhere, perhaps, and investing it into his community. Because the good society, the way you create a good society is not just by investing in health and agric and infrastructure, and all those things are critical. But what makes a good society is actually arts, the art sector. And so a human being who is developed, no matter how they developed, if they don't have an exposure to the creative space, you know, sometimes it affects the very essence of who you are as a human being. And so in developing our country, we need to think about what we need to do to develop a good society. A good society is someone who perhaps will see something lying on the floor and say, this shouldn't be here. We'll think about perhaps having a great conversation beyond how you dress and which parts of your body you show. We'll think about long-term, how our buildings look, how our gutters look. Those are the kinds of things that create a good society. And so after you've eaten, which is if you take the hierarchy, after you've eaten and shelter and all, what is it that makes you a human being beyond an animal? That is what we are talking about. Because as for eating and shelter and all those things, even animals do it. What makes us different from animals is the fact that we go beyond the point where we start projecting into the future, into our environment, what makes us comfortable as human beings and what promotes peace and love and all those things. And we shouldn't forget that as we think about how do we develop our country. But let me bring that home. There's a book that I read some time ago called Good to Great. I don't know if anyone here has read that book, Good to Great. Nice one. So you identify with what I'm going to talk about. There's a concept in that book that is interesting, that if you want to perhaps make it in life, it's, let's just say I'm putting an idea forward that we can explore. If you want to make it in life, you must fulfill 3 circles, and these circles must interact. And where the 3 interact, perhaps is where the golden point is. So perhaps the first thing to ask yourself is, do I love what I'm doing? Right? Do I love it? Someone will say, what does love mean? Does it put food on the table? But life is so hard that to get up and do something over and over and over and over again, you must love it. And that's one of the things that is lacking in our communities and in our societies. We look at careers, or parents advise their children to look at careers without thinking about the concept of, do you love this? So maybe, oh, if you enter into this career, you make money. If you enter into this career, to make my family proud. If you enter into this career, so sometimes even when it comes to the creative spaces, a family or a parent will advise the child not to get into that space because they think it doesn't make money. But that's why a lot of people are going around unhappy, stressed, and they don't even make the money that they thought they would make, because life is so hard that there must be something that pushes you when everything else fails. And I'll connect that to passion. So then the passion, and you know, the theme is exploring creative business, transforming your passion into revenue. So there must be something that wakes you up and keeps you going, despite. People will ask me, why do you keep going after how many years? What keeps you smiling after all the issues, the problems? What keeps you smiling? If you don't find the thing that you love and you have passion for to take through your life, you become at the end of your life, you'll be very unhappy. Then there's a third circle, which is money. That's the trick. So you must find what you love. You must find what you are passionate about, and you must find a way to make money out of it. Now, in the creative space, a lot of us are stuck at where we love, where we have passion. We have it. I mean, I haven't seen one creative person yet who doesn't have love or passion. I mean, we stay up all night. In my younger days, we won't sleep for 3 days. We won't bath. We won't brush our teeth. We won't do anything. Yeah. You know, you get up, sometimes your computer is by you. As soon as you get up, that's what you are going to. I mean, and you just keep going and going. So the passion and the love is there. The third circle that most of us are missing is to find a way to make money out of it. Because without money as well, your love and passion will soon dry you. You know, it will dry up. So then you have to think about, how can we make money? And it's interesting because when we think about, when we are advising our children even on careers, we think about the creative space as not where to make, you can't make money there. But that's one of the easiest and biggest spaces you can make money in. So now let me give you some figures. When you come to the the creation of content alone, in the content space, globally is over 2 trillion. During COVID, this was one of the most resilient sectors. In fact, in the US, and I'll narrow down, sometimes my bias is towards film, so forgive me. But my bias is also towards film because films carries along all the other spaces, whether you're designing costume, makeup, craft, music, whatever. It's within film. You can't watch a film without somebody wearing clothes or there's music. So pardon my bias. During or after, COVID, the film space was the biggest. In fact, incomes in that space was 45% higher than all the other sectors, including telecoms and all that, during COVID. People were making money, and people continue to make money. In fact, according to UNESCO, in Africa, the space alone, first of all, the creative space is the highest employer on the continent. Did you know that? Ghana is the second largest content producer on the continent after Nigeria. Did you know that? See, so right now we are employing 5 million and bringing 5 billion. But the potential, according to UNESCO, is 20 billion. But at the Africa Cinema Summit last year, experts even said 20 billion is an understatement. This is a sector that can bring you over 100 billion. If we invest right. That's the thing, if we invest right. So if you're a creative person and you are there, or you want to create or get into the space, by all means, follow your passion, follow your love. But if you don't make it a business, I made it a business, that's why I'm still here. Otherwise, there are many people I started with, some of them even had more talent than I did, but they're nowhere. Because they didn't find a way to make money out of it. Now, if you come to the business, the film space alone, down the value chain, somebody will think, because you hear about actresses all the time, or actors, you think that's where you can be. No. You can go behind the camera, which is what I did. When you go behind the camera, there are various levels of places. But even then, beyond where you are an artist or you have craft, the technical know-how, there are other businesses. For instance, if you take the film space, I mentioned costume when I was talking. In Ghana, there's no one costume house that supplies the film space. Has anybody thought about it? When you go to Atlanta, for instance, and you want to make a film, you just go into a place, you rent the costumes you want, you go and make your films, afterwards you bring it. Now there are even so many events. Everybody has to go and spend like $10,000, 5,000 Ghana cedi putting up a costume. There could be a costume house that just rents out clothes in New York. If I want to go to an event, I can go somewhere, rent a dress, and then come and wear it, go to the event. Maybe it will cost me like $100 or $200 or $500. Afterwards, I return it. I don't have to pay, and keep it. For instance, I have clothes that I have worn. I've worn once or twice. There were cameras on me, so now I can't wear it again because everybody will see that I've worn this. That's a business. Have you thought about it? Makeup. Instead of just doing it even on you love to do makeup, you can turn it into a business. Equipment, props. There's this gentleman who thought about it and started a props house. And he's doing so well around the trade fair. So when films come to shoot, they go there. If I want a microphone, this beautiful microphone, I don't need to go and buy it. I come and rent it. Afterwards, I bring it. And he's making money out of it. And so I'm just saying this to say that within the value chain, and I haven't even touched on the market. You saw the Africa Cinema Summit. Let me take a minute to say, please go and register and attend. But there's so many, this year is happening between the 7th and the 10th of October. There's opportunities within the space where you can do business. You look within your environment. What is there? Recently, I saw this gentleman who went to technical school. And, what he was doing was, he's in the creative space. He did this small table and chair. He invented this very small table and chair that can be expanded for hostels. And that's a business. And so we need to start to think, about how, if let's say, this event that we are at, APSA is sponsoring this event. If I go to APSA and I say, please give me money to put into my business or my film or whatever, or my any other, sector, any other thing I'm doing within the space, they will ask me one question: how do we get our money back? So when Chief was talking, he spoke about non-performing loans and all that. That's all great, but who goes and falls into a hole intentionally? So it may be unperforming, but he's not going to perhaps give you that money when he knows this loan is not going to perform. So then, as an artist, you have to come up with a business plan. You have to show how do the investors, the money people will call it return on investment. So then if you're looking at return on investment, I was talking with my brother Ibrahim and we're talking about his facility in the north and we're saying, my God, this could become a screening center for films. And the whole northern region has no screening centers or film centers. That's a business. Now, let me just not even talk about the northern region. Beyond Accra and Kumasi, you don't have screening spaces for films all over the country. That's a business. Up until 2 years ago, Ghana was the largest gaming country, the second largest gaming country on the continent after South Africa. We are all playing games. 40% of South African population are gamers. In 2022 or so, Ghana spent over $60 million on downloading mobile games. So we are playing the games. Who is developing the game? All the infrastructure down that value chain. So you could perhaps have a small center that is multi-center. You are showing films, you are using it for esports, you are doing whatever, people don't know how to, they can't buy console because console is expensive. You can buy a console and then turn it into, rent it out. So all we are saying is that the creative space is one of the spaces where you can make a lot of money. If you think about it as a business, it has to fulfill the passion space. I don't know anybody who is in the creative space who is not passionate. You have to have the love. If you don't have the love, it may not work. But then you have to find a way to make money out of it. And how can you be standing in the midst of plenty and say you are hungry? When this space is one of the spaces that has the most potential for money and say that you are hungry. Even as government, sometimes government is looking on a return on investment. So even if we go to government, we say to government, give us money, we must show government how government will get a return on investment. Otherwise, that money will not come to the creative space. So even as creatives, when we are talking to government, and I learned that lesson the hard way, and we are saying, oh, invest in us, have we shown how government is going to get that money back, either through employment or more money coming or whatever, but we don't speak the business language, and so we don't get government to pay attention. Until the National Film Authority came and started gathering data and speaking to the fact that, look, showing government the numbers and saying that, look, if you invest in us, this is how many jobs we'll create. This is how much will come into the country. We say that, oh, give us money to invest in filmmakers. We are asking people to come and shoot in Ghana. By the way, if you give us this amount of money, when people come and shoot, this is how much they will bring. And for real, there are films over, $500 million that are looking to come and shoot in Ghana, if only we had an incentive. But we need to be able to show government the business case to say that if you waive these taxes, then this is how much you will get at the back end. Before government will waive that taxes on saying, saying that we should import equipment. So let's just shift. Sometimes it's just a matter of perception. Let's just shift where we stand, where we start thinking we are poor. We are not poor. I think that's a mindset that covers all of us. As Africans, sometimes, and as Ghanaians, we think we are the richest people, rich in everything. And yet, when we are thinking, we think that we are poor. And because of that mindset, we are not able to position ourselves well. Even when we go for conversations, we undersell ourselves. So if we're going to banks and putting these figures down and showing a return on investment and talking business and saying, look, we are passionate, we love it, but we can bring you money, this conversation will turn around. So my ideal situation is where the creative space begins to own our space, have confidence in our space, look for the data, and be able to show the investors that, look, give us the money, and we'll show you a return on investment. And then let's begin to become rich in our minds. There's not too much time, so I'm going to try and wrap it up. But the thing with being in the creative space, they say that you have to be delusional, a bit delusional, to be a creative. Because what is being a creative is thinking that you can bring something to life that was never, nobody sees. If you are not a bit delusional, I don't know how you can go around thinking that. But let's understand that in our delusion, it's not just delusion. It is there. The numbers are there. Let's gather them and let's become confident in our delusion. I think we'll talk more as we go along, so I end right here. Thank you so much.
It's difficult to... I wanted to talk about some key things. I was making some points as Juliet and Chief Mumin were talking. And one of the things that Chief Mumin spoke about was the fact that Africa creates value, but a lot of that value does not really sit within the continent in terms of what we create. And then also the idea of reviving the mindset through the creative industry. That is one thing. And Juliet and I, when we were talking, Juliet was saying that Ghana, a lot of people have very poor souls. And I said that we don't have a soul to begin with. So, as I beg to differ, it's not even a poor soul. The souls are even very little. Yeah. So and culture and creativity, particularly also through film, is how we can somehow revive the body with the soul. And Chief Mumin spoke about the fact that we need to invest into creativity for social value and not just for commercial value, which is important. But also the fact that in our generation, we are doing work that will somehow clear the path for others in the future, which I think is very important. And then to Juliet now, we're talking about public policy and how that can lead to economic transformations within the creative sector. And what you also mentioned about the good society, which is very important. Like, how do we build a good society anywhere? And then creativity certainly is one of the most important points and spaces to build a good society. And then she spoke about the idea of like importing equipment for films and others for breaks. Recently, we had I don't know if you know of this, the Polaroid, the old Polaroids.
So, you know, the company, they made the small cameras, but they made very large cameras also. So the Ghanaian photographer, James Bano, he turned 95 recently, and there was a James Bano festival, which there were exhibitions across the country, from Accra through Kumasi to Tamale. And in Tamale, we hosted a very major exhibition of his work, mostly work that he had done that had never been shown before. So in 1959, he came to Tamale, and that was the only time he ever came there. He went to Tolong and other places, and he made some really good photographs. And those photos have never been shown before, because he lived in the UK for quite a long time, and he worked with the Drum magazine and others. So most museums are used to showing those works that he did. But we wanted to show work, particularly in communities, because if someone like James Bano, who is 95, he hasn't been in Tamale since 1959. It's very rare that you find someone who's still alive since 1959 and still coming back to a space. So just 3 weeks ago, he came to Tamale to open the show. And he hadn't come there since 1959. You can imagine. Akosomo had not even been built yet. So that's a very long time ago. And I worked with the Polaroid Foundation in Venice to do an exhibition recently and produce work. And they had this camera that they made in the 70s. The camera has never been brought to the continent before. And there are only 5 that exist in the world. One is at the Harvard University in their museum, and 4 are active. And they only made 5 when the camera was made. And they are very large-scale cameras. So imagine a Polaroid is this size, but that camera is about this size, you know? So there was the idea to combine making, like, James and I coming together to make a series of photos. So I said, why not make these photos in the north? Because when you make it in the north, even the subject matter will be different. Because if James, of course, like when it comes to Ghana, he's mostly in Accra. If you shoot this in Accra, people will hijack it. You know, when you go to exhibitions and all that, you always have the same type of bodies in those exhibitions. You know, people always go to exhibitions pretending that they understand what they're seeing. You know, it's a culture of art, you know, like with the wine glasses and all that. Like, you know, and the idea is that how do we expand the bodies? Because even when you see paintings in art exhibitions, they're mostly because precarity is what has breeded art over the years. Because Mumin was talking about the Medicis and all that. So if you're going to make work, and then, for instance, you're painting a Kaye or whatever, and then the painting, let's say, goes to hang in a museum or in a gallery somewhere, forgetting that most often the Kaye will not be part of the conversation of the work. So for me, the question was that how do we extend that? So we decided, why not just use the photograph to photograph the kids and then the workers in the community in Tamale. So we did that. You know, but when the camera arrived in Ghana, that was a problem, to get it out of customs. Something that was just coming on temporal imports. Customs was asking for them to pay 5.7 million Ghana cedis. Yes, exactly, as a bond before they released the camera. Because temporal imports. And that's, look, even when I make exhibitions abroad and I decide that I'm going to save these artworks and then transport them to Ghana because we're building a permanent collection for future generations. The last time my works arrived back at the port, to clear it and everything, it was 500,000 cedis. Yes, something that you've made in Ghana, you sent abroad, and you're returning it to give it back to the society that you're in. So at the end of you guys were talking about one thing, love. It's only love that keeps us in this. Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah, without love, love is very important. People say, well, can we eat love? But you can't eat it. But then in the long term, it keeps the body and it keeps the mind alive. If not, you go insane. Because somebody asks, but why should I even do this? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what you're talking about, the delusional aspect. Yes, you need a bit of delusion. Or sometimes I would say a bit of stupidity. Because without stupidity, you can't be too sensible. People always make calculation. Oh, if I do it like this and like that, this will happen. No, it won't happen. There are so many things. It's like in the world, everything conspires not to make things happen, particularly when it comes to the creative industry. But the humanities in the world, that is what keeps any society alive. Without film, a lot of people always say that, oh, America is this and that. So in the film, when someone falls down, 911, an ambulance comes, whew, So they take the person to the hospital. And I said, it doesn't happen like that in America. Yeah, film has made us to believe something which does not exist. Do you know the death? People are running away from hospitals because the ambulance took them to a hospital and they have to pay $5,000. But the film doesn't tell you that. So film, again, culture, it's such a powerful medium. I'm saying it in a good way, that in a sense that film and culture has a way of somehow retelling stories and also making us to believe in a world that we live in, or a world that we want. I wanted to talk about the idea of creating value, building the good society again. I brought some 5 images just on something very specific. A couple of years ago, about almost a decade ago, when I was a student at K University doing my master's, I was very interested in the trains from the Ghana Railway, the history in it. Back in the late 1800s, after slavery had been abolished, the body as a commodity, it moved into raw materials. At the time, Ghana, cocoa was already tetekwashi. Cocoa was already striving and all that. So the British built the railway in order to be able to extract cocoa, cola, bauxite, gold, and others, manganese, to the ports. And they built the Takoradi port. And at the time when they built it, the idea was just for extraction of raw materials. So everything that was done actually was meant for the extraction of raw materials. So this is an image of the Takoradi Harbour. This is like early 1920s, thereabouts. After the port was complete, the train network was complete. The train network had been built from Accra through Huni Valley, Takwa Obuase, all the way through, Kowu Praso to Koforidua to Accra. So most of these communities, you see that they are farming communities or places where there are mines and all that. But again, I'm talking about the mindset of the body, because within a colonial agency, everything was meant for colonial extraction. So important, so you see the English Electric. And then, this is in Tamale last year, at the beginning of last year, because a lot of the railway lines, again, the trains, all the trains that existed in Ghana from the late 1800s till now have all been scrapped. So even children who are going to be born tomorrow, all these histories and memories are gone, you see. So as a student, I used to go to these places, filming, documenting work of the workers, and also finding ways in which I could collect these objects. But you realize that the railway line, each time a train goes on a line, imagine since even 1920-something, each time it goes on a line, it leaves a memory. It's like a hard drive. It's like the way the mind also works, the neurons and all that. So the objects contain memory. So imagine when these are taken out and sold to scrap dealers to cut into pieces. You are destroying the memory of time in itself. So by taking, and the labor for building the railway, predominantly a lot also came from the north. A lot of people migrated from the north to work in the railway sector, the mines and all that. So today, and the railway network was never also expanded to the north. So imagine taking this object in its memory and taking it to the north, where there are children who their ancestors went to work elsewhere. Probably some of them died even doing that work. And then now you're bringing this object as a memory back. And this time around, imagine the previous image. The workers are doing this in order to be able to build a system of extraction. But this time around, this is not an extractive system. This is a gift. You are taking the history, the precarity, building something which the kids... So imagine this is a workshop that we've written a letter to the schools and said, today we are building a railway line. Invite your kids to come and see. So they are coming. It's like when archaeology happens, it's also a way of extracting time, history, and all that. But this time around, they are not there to witness the extraction. The archaeology is somehow excavating future memories and all that. The things that are birthed in their minds as they witness these things, as they grow up with, creative-wise, is going to be different. So you realize that even in images, a lot of the archives I have of the trains are mostly at the port, where they are hoisting the trains of the Black Star Line ship or others much later or before. And then you never see, let's say, a group of young people even there to witness. And the idea of creating witnesses is very important. Film manages to do that very well because of the audiences it attracts. But when it comes to art and all that, sometimes it becomes a bit limited, because when you're making a painting or a sculpture, it ends up in the gallery or in someone's bedroom. And I've always said to myself, I don't make works for people to put in their houses. I really don't care. I'm not there to decorate your house. I'm there to make work because the work has significant value and meaning to the society or to history in itself. So this is work. So the work might not be a commodity, but then it is work that somehow also opens up new ways of thinking about history and creative forms. So that is one other image. And then now you realize that these are kids from villages and all that who are sitting in Aboboya. And then most often, you might not associate Aboboya to connecting young people or people to exhibitions. In Accra, no one will come to a gallery to see an exhibition in Aboboya. They'll either bring an Uber or they come in their nice car or something. Or at worst, maybe they'll take a trotro or walk or something. But the idea of having a variety of forms in terms of engagement is also very important. So with regards to, let's say, kids, there are even instances where people have brought yellows to, let's say, the institution. And one yellow, one guy came, he brought 15 kids in the, you know, the Pragia. Yeah, 15 kids in one. Yeah, it's like, you know, dead or alive, you are coming with that kind of a thing. Yeah, so the idea that we can build a society which allows, even because we are talking about precarity, because I remember when I wanted to build this in Tamale, people said, oh, but why would you even build it there? The people there are not sophisticated. They don't understand art and whatever. But I'm like, art is not, we don't make art because we think we know it. We make art because we're building something. You know, art is always about the expression of freedom. And what is there about freedom if we cannot take risk in order to be able to guarantee the fact that maybe you've seen something, but why not create something that also expands the world and allows other people to be able to see it? So that's what this image does. And finally this, where even like the question of redistribution, that's one thing that doesn't seem to make any sense. In Tamale, when we have workshops or with the institution where we have collections of objects and all that, we pay for buses to go to communities and bring the kids from villages and all that, the OA VIP buses and all that. And the bus can take up to, let's say, 50 people. But because they are kids, it can take up to, let's say, 110 children. So imagine if you send 5 buses to a community. Like just a few days ago, we even brought some kids from Tolong and all that, like 170 kids. So imagine that a lot of these kids, they've never even crossed Tolong to even go to Tamale. How much more think about Accra and all that? But the educational system wants them to be able to compete with kids who are here in GIS and other places. What kind of a country or society are you going to build one day? So is the reality. The fact that you are building a society which inherently is flawed and has created a gap in itself. So already, a lot of the kids will grow up and then one day they realize that, oh, they are, for instance, they want to be able to do things, but in terms of exposure and experience, there might be others who have those exposures. But even in terms of interpretation, those others who have the exposure, they don't have the right interpretations. Because sometimes we tend to see people as sophisticated and intelligent because they have something we don't. But that is not justice. When all of us have it, that's when we can access intelligence. You know it, I know it, and now we can talk about it. Oh, but what do you think about this? Maybe I might even have a better insight based on my condition, based on the fact that I even live, for instance, in Tolong. There are certain experiences that allows me to be able to read it in a much more intelligent form than even if you live in Accra or in New York or elsewhere. So the last, I would say, is about the value that we're talking about. Because for us as artists, for instance, I don't make money in Ghana from the work that I produce. I travel around the world, I teach, I make installations and all kinds of things. I do installations in Ghana and all that. But the fact that in Ghana, there are so many wealthy people, so many rich people. But when people have money, they want to buy the next house in Trasaco or buy the next Bugatti or Rolls Royce or whatever. Whereas elsewhere, their mates are investing into building like cultural institutions, buying castles, turning them into spaces and all that. That is one thing that we have to invest into the next generation. So that's why for us in Tamale, it's not so much about the fact that, oh, the kids just come and see a painting or a sculpture. It's about the entire system. You know, one day, many of these kids, I don't even hope they become artists one day. We just hope that one day they become good thinkers in a good society one day. When some of them become doctors or engineers or whatever, they realize that in thinking about the society that they find themselves in, all different things are connected. So some of them will become wealthy in the future. And how do they invest their money into the creative sector as we're talking about? How do we invest into the creative sector? So those things are very important. And also a lot of the works that I've made for museums, there are works like, there's a work that I made with these shoemaker boxes, non-rentable in Cancer. One was bought by the National Gallery of Canada. So when you go to Canada, it's in the public collection of the whole country. There's one in Miami in a museum. There's one in Amsterdam. And there are 2 versions which are here in Ghana. I remember there was a museum in Norway called the Astrid Family Museum. They invited me to Norway to see, because they have a very magnificent collection. And they wanted to buy the work because they said, oh, you know, we need it because we need to reconstitute our collection, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I can't sell it. And they said, why? And I said, it's not mine to sell. I have gifted the work to a public trust in Ghana. They said, but you can always make the work again. I said, no, I can't. The time as I made the work, the materials I made the work with and all that, it was coming from an old factory that had been built by Nkrumah back in the 60s when Tema was built. And the factory had been abandoned. So the interior, the archives, that was what made the work. I can't reproduce that. The soul that went into the work. Someone would have said, oh, just sell it. You can always make another after all. You're not the artist. But it doesn't work that way because every work has its provenance. So if you decide to keep the work in Ghana, currently, one of those works is valued at $500,000. So there are 2 of it in Tamale. So just that 2 alone is more than the value I've spent on building the institution. And that is one work. And there are at least 500 works which I've gifted to the public trust over the last 10 years. So imagine that even now, if you're not looking at the infrastructure, you're looking at... you are not looking at the infrastructure. You are looking at the value of the work in it. Because the Mona Lisa, France has placed a tax value of $2 billion on it. It means that even if the Louvre decides they ever want to sell it, they can't sell it because no one will be able to pay that. But then in Ghana, do we understand that? Are we on that level? And it's not just the artists, but also, I think as I said, I like something that you said very well, that you went to study policy in order to be able to go into governance and all that. Because as artists also, that's one thing that we also have to do. We have to go into that sector because you also just can't sit there and then leave it into other people's hands. We need to be able to influence decisions and things that happen within that. And eventually when that happens, the 100 billion that you were talking about, it would even be a lot more.
All right. So I want to start by showing you a video. And this trailer, I believe, sums up everything that I do in just a couple of minutes. So let's watch the trailer, and then we'll come back for our conversation. So that was the Matrix Verse Experience 2023. Now let me talk a little bit about my journey. I started writing professionally when I was about 14 years old, and I'm surprised to see that my dad is here because he didn't tell me he was coming, he just showed up. So hi, Daddy. Now my story has not been, I'm sorry, it's not been the story where my parents never encouraged me to be an artist. In fact, when I was in kindergarten, I would write letters to my teachers, and my parents would encourage that. And I'm sure they have more stories which are embarrassing, so I'm not going to allow him to speak about it. Definitely not. But around 14 years old, I realized, no, there's something there, and I really want to write. But when I was in junior high, so JSS, and then in high school, I went to Northridge Lyceum and then to Tama International School. My mathematics was actually quite strong. So a lot of my teachers thought I would do something mathematical. Indeed, I thought I was going to follow my father's footsteps and be an economist because I love numbers. I still do. But when I was in high school, and this is the power of the teacher, right? My English teacher said to me, your literary analysis is powerful. And this is a guy who was holding a PhD. He had been to Oxford. He had gone to all these big schools. And he told me, he said, it has been a long time since I've found someone who can analyze art and literature the way you do. So don't take it for granted. And I must have been about 17 or 18 then. So I started taking my writing very seriously because what we knew was that you could only be a great analyst of work if you are a good writer or producer of art yourself. And that's where it started. Now, I will say that I've been doing this, writing, publishing, all that, but the Matriarch's verse, somewhere in 2018, Frema Adunyame, I know she won't want me to put her on the spot, but I'm going to. So Frema is the co-producer of the Matriarch's verse and co-founder of the concept. And Frema said to me, she said, you know what? You have so much, and you need to perform it. And now this is somebody who had been an artist manager for years, working with so many big names in the industry. And she says, no, there's something, we need to put together an event. And I said, yeah, but will people come? It's poetry. She said, well, you never know until you try. Then we sat down, we discussed, and we said, look, if we're going to do this thing, we can't do it like anything that anyone has seen before. So yes, our artistic spaces are there. We go into those spaces, we perform, we do open mics, but let's give people a show. So what did we do? Walked into Kempinski with a proposal, didn't know anybody there. Asked for the marketing manager and said, this is what we want to do, will you give us the space? And they said yes. So my story and journey has been really one of just grit, and the phrase I like, just do it. That's what, just do it. And the worst that can happen is someone would say no. All right. So let me get into it. You've already heard who I am. I'm not going to talk much about that. But the time and the point where I decided that this thing had to be a business was when I outdoored my very first book, The Matriarch's Verse. This was in 2019. And what happened with The Matriarch's Verse was, it is a collection of about 60 poems that span 10 years of writing. And why did it take me so long to publish? I wanted to publish in Ghana. I wanted a Ghanaian publisher, I wanted Ghanaian editors, but everyone I was coming across up until then didn't understand contemporary poetry. So you had Welly, who is a brilliant publisher, but he was used to working with the old school, the post-colonial writers, freedom fighters. But that wasn't what I was writing. And so I said I would wait and bide my time. And then I met Dakpabli and Associates. Of course, I knew Nana Aredamwa and Kofi Akpabli, but I met them as publishers. They form the two arms of the publishing house. And they said, well, you can be our first poets that we're publishing. And I said, I don't mind. I've always been a pioneer in my whole life, so I have no problems being the guinea pig. And so we did it, and we launched it here at Alisa Hotel. So it's a very full circle moment, right? Now, we printed an initial 500 copies. And what I don't even think my parents and friends know is that within 3 months, we ran out of copies. In fact, before that. Yeah. So we had to do a reprint, and we've been reprinting ever since. Now, working with the publishers, what it made me realize was that we can't do publishing in Ghana as authors or writers the way it's done in the West. It doesn't work. We just don't have the ecosystem of agents. People are scouting for it. You're laughing. You know the drill. It doesn't work. As with many things in the creative space and in business in general, in Ghana, we need to develop our own model. And so I decided to dedicate my journey to seeing what that model should look like. So we did that, and we got the book on Amazon. We got it on Nook. You know Nook? So, and there's a Kindle version of the book as well. We have it on booknook.store in Ghana, which is the largest bookstore, online book marketplace in Africa now. So a round of applause for that, because it's Ghanaian owned. It's Ghanaian owned, not just African owned, Ghanaian owned. And so we're doing that. Now, somewhere in 2020, and I mentioned earlier when I was introducing Juliet that she's my mentor. So Juliet recommended me to someone in the US to do something. Now, Christine Heenan is a former director of the Rockefeller Institute, the Rockefeller Foundation. And she was looking for a group of women from all over the world who could come together and edit a newsletter which would project female journalists, women journalists around the world. And Juliet, they were looking for someone who was under 30 at the time, I think, or just a little above 30, and from the global south, and Ghana would qualify. And Juliet says, no, I know the person, she can do it. So I got a call from Christine's office, and mind you, this is the height of COVID. So we sat down, and she said, oh, I hear you're right to send me some of your work. And I sent her the book, and she, in turn, got it on some platforms in the US, and then it just went like wildfire. Now, working with these women, one of the woman who is on this influencer editorial panel. Her name is Alison Smalley. Alison Smalley has been in journalism for ages. She was there to report on behalf of the New York Times when the Berlin Wall fell. Yes, and I sit on a board with this woman. Then you have Pat Mitchell. Pat Mitchell is the first female president of CNN Productions, first female president of PBS in the US, the board chair of the Sundance Institute, the founder of TED Women, and the woman is 81 and you should see her. Now, being with Sandy, just believed in my craft in a way that many Ghanaians up until then hadn't. And I thought, you know what? This thing has the potential to be a bigger business. So in 2020, COVID, I had the chance to do a TED Talk. TED Global, I mean, I'd done TEDx Accra, I'd done other TEDx platforms, but global TED Talk. And what made it fun was the fact that it was COVID, so we had to record. So I had all these big directors, you know, on Zoom, and they were directing the whole production. We got to film B-roll around Accra. And the theme for that year's conference was fearless. And they just said, you know what, write a poem for us that captivates and encapsulates fearlessness. And I did that, and we went back about 7, 8 drafts, and then we found what we want, and we did that. And then that's where it got bigger and bigger. Now, a lot of what I do, you know, when you're a writer, you tend to be a little more behind the scenes. It's not as in your face as a musician or someone who is performing all the time. I do perform my poetry, but I like to say that my poetry is primarily for the page before it becomes for the stage. And so I write, and that's why I read in performance. I write primarily for my work to be read. It's a strong statement that I make when I step on stage. So now 2020, this TED Talk happened and whatnot. But I was also writing very actively, writing a lot about the experiences of Ghanaians and Africans during COVID, through social media, through speaking to people. I think when you do what you do in media and in the arts, people just tend to confide in you. And when you have red hair, it's like, you dare, you'll get us. You're not going to judge us, you know. So there was a lot of that, and I was writing. And, you know, Ghanaians, we don't talk about what we are going through. So the Westerners, you know, the celebrities, they were on CNN and whatnot talking about how, oh, I have COVID and so does my wife, and we're here, oh, hey, we're drinking lots of water and we're good, we're drinking vitamin water, all that. Ghana, we were not saying anything. Nothing. In fact, until you tell somebody, oh, I had COVID, hey, Mr. So, oh, I didn't know nyakra, that kind of thing. So I thought, let me document these things. So that led me to start writing my second collection of poetry when the person who's called COVID came. So it really just talks about anything from love to politics. I mean, you have the politics of COVID vaccines in there in a poem. You have, you know, I Am Not a Mother, which talks about a woman. It's from the perspective of a woman who is a career woman, and now it's COVID. She's at home. She's working from home. And her kids are home. They can't go to school, right? At least not physically. And she's battling with herself because she says, look, I don't know how to do this thing. They're asking me about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and I have work to do. And she's frustrated, and she's beginning to question whether she's the mother that society would expect her to be. And if she's not, does that mean that she's a mother? Now, moving forward, the Matriarch's Verse book won a prize, the Ghana Association of Writers National Prize. That was in 2021, so won a prize. Yes, national prize. And then, and then working together with some very talented people who I had worked with at City. You know, Samens always tells us, collaborate, don't just come to work. Find people who have like minds and do things together. So I worked with a gentleman, Mo Shatta, who at the time was, you know, doing camera, and then Asantua was a director, and we created this poetry film with I Am Not a Mother, and then that also won the Ghana Association of Writers Prize, and then went on to win a prize in Lagos, and then won a prize in South Africa, and then also was featured at the Sundance Film Festival. So that's where we're like, no, this thing is serious business, right? So how do we go about the business? I have structure, lots of structure. So the way it works for me is, I'm a creative, right? But you need to have a very strong schedule. And so, Gilbert, if you can pull up the schedule for me. Yes, I want to show you what my schedule looks like. So what I do is I have this schedule, And it includes my schedule for work at City, my schedule with all personal endeavors, even when I should write. Sometimes it's documented in there because I write every single day. And that's the thing, if you're doing this business thing as an artist, you can't treat, like I like to say, borrowing from Frema, you can't treat your work like the stepchild of a terrible step-parent. No, you cannot. You have to write every day, even if it means one line. So let's just scroll down, Gilbert. I want you to go fast so that people don't read all the things that I'm doing. What is that? So just going down, go. This is 2024. So every day is there, the months are there. And this is a Google document, okay? Down. Okay, so we can go back to the slides. I don't want you people to read plenty things. But you get the drift. So what I do is every day, I have a 5 a day. And I tell myself that, so I write them down either on a piece of paper, in my journal, whatever. Out of this schedule, and some things I have to have a to-do list as well. If I don't do anything today, I must do these 5 things. If I don't, I will not sleep. So if it means I'm sleeping at 5 a.m. to get it done, it has to be done. And that's the kind of discipline, I mean, Ibrahim will tell you, Chief will tell you, Juliet will tell you, that's the kind of discipline that this business thing is required. And you see, when you get to the point where people are contracting you to perform at events, write things for them, create films for them, Padiki has stepped out, I'm sure she'll be back. Padiki, if you've been to Rock City, she did all the paintings on the Rock City's walls. When La Palme was redoing doing a facelift, she did all the paintings in there. And this woman paints like up to 50 paintings in one night. So you become prolific, and when the contracts start coming, you can't tell the client that, oh, you know what, I need inspiration, it's not coming, so give me a week. You can't say that. You need to create the inspiration for yourself. And so that's why the schedules are important. I want to go back to talking about team up here. So there's a manager in there, there's a business development manager. So a manager basically keeping me on my toes, running ideas. You know, oh, hey, what do you think creatively? Should I do this? Does it make sense? Is it brand aligned? You know, all that. And then also signing the big contracts where that has to be done, okay? Then we have the business development manager. His job is to go and look for, we're doing events, sponsorship. There's a big project we want to do. Like I have a book that is hanging on my neck. How do we print it? You know, he has to go and find the money for that. Pitching creative ways to business people or people who could fund these things and letting them understand that's possible. So daily, that's his job, business development manager. And then also looking for places you can show up to perform, places you can speak, people you can write for, people you can consult for, so that's his job. Some people will contact you directly, but for the chain to work, I always refer because we have a rate card and everybody in the chain has to get percentages. So transparency is important so that we work together well and we trust each other. Then I have my executive assistant. She, on a day-to-day, will make sure that this big schedule, look, I know you're tired, but you have to go, otherwise I can't get paid, you know, that kind of thing. And then we also have people who work with us on the sidelines. So graphic designer, we've got social media manager, a digital space manager, because I have a website, he's there.